Let me bring up the Zoom here as well. I wanted to just tell anybody that's watching as well that let me bring up the Zoom here as well. Gosh, I need to mute this on my page first. Let's see how I can mute this. Okay, here we go. All right. So I'm going to be taking some questions also. So if people, I'm going to try to check the FilmGate page and OCinema page and everyone's pages here while we're talking to see if anyone's writing in some questions. So I'll try to take those during this talk. And we've got a lot to get to. So I'm going to just start right in. But I wanted to first definitely pay tribute to some of the, I know we lost here in South Florida a couple people to this COVID crisis, like Joe Adler, that I know a lot of you know, and Terrence McNally, who is a great writer here in Key West, and just all those others that have been affected here in South Florida. I know struggling to get through this. But today I wanted to bring together some of my favorite filmmakers as well here in South Florida. And Andrew, I think you're joining us from the West Coast. Is that where you're at right now?
Yeah, I'm in LA.
Cool. And wanted to just talk about kind of how this is affecting us. A lot of the productions, you know, that are on hold right now, what people are doing and what resources are available out there for filmmakers, if we know of any. You know, we certainly have seen that this has had an effect on worldwide productions. I know Netflix, I don't think is planning on getting back into shooting until sometime mid-July is what they're planning. And I know there are a lot of handbooks out there that are circulating the internet about new on-set etiquette and things like that. But I kind of want to start with you guys and see how you're doing, check in with you and see where you're at with this. And I guess I want to start with Billy. How are things going there in Miami? Talk to us.
Oh, well, first I should note that Joe Adler, is my understanding, did not pass away from COVID-19.
Okay.
He was ill for some time, but rest in peace. I said, and I stand by it. That's the kind of, you know, loss in an arts community that you never refill. No one ever takes over that kind of role that Joe Adler played in the theater and the arts community in Miami. It's just an unfillable hole. But other than that, and other than sort of a constant stream of bad news coming online and elsewhere, I think those in Miami who have been acting responsibly have been relatively safe, which is to say people who are staying the fuck. It's been a surprising number of people who have, I think, despite, you know, what you sort of viral fuckery that you see people gathering on balconies for DJs, poolside DJ sessions. For the most part, I feel like people had responded pretty well and pretty responsibly. Obviously, economically, in a tourism economy, it's absolutely devastating. So, you know, you have people who are not paycheck to paycheck, but who literally work day to day, tip to tip, you know, tip jar to tip jar. And that's been really tough. On the production side of things, obviously, nothing is happening for people in our business. But on the fortunate side, there are two other elements to our industry, which is development and post-production. And just our company at Rack and Tour, by sheer just dumb luck of our cycle, we wound up in post-production on multiple projects, literally just in time. Our last day of production was Thursday, March 12th. And this woman, God bless her, led us into her home in Santa Barbara, California. And she had just said, she goes, it's because I was on the phone with my book agent who said, why are you letting these people in your house? It's so irresponsible. And if we had scheduled that interview for Friday the 13th, she probably wouldn't have let us come in and do the interview. You might remember that whole week was like, it was just like dominoes were falling. And then come Friday the 13th, I mean, we all just suddenly woke up like Andrew Gillum on the floor of the Mondrian looking around going, what the hell is happening here? but we just lucked out where we're editing on a bunch of projects. And something funny that I've noticed, and I'm wondering if anybody else noticed, development has ramped up in a huge way. Suddenly, everybody's calling everybody with like long dormant projects and ideas and things and going like, what's been happening? Everybody's like gone to the boneyard, the development boneyard, and they're you know, they're like their Google spreadsheets of projects and ideas and going like, hey, what's happening? We should follow up and have Zoom meetings about that. So like shit in development and in post-production to me is just like, it's either business as usual or like full steam ahead. The problem is, of course, is there's no new production.
Right. Yeah, that's one of the issues. I think a lot of people now are taking time to write scripts. I know offline here just a minute ago we were talking, Jason, you were telling us that, well, let's go back kind of how this has affected you and also kind of how it's made you change gears.
Yeah, I've been, well, one, I just want to say it's really good to see all of you. But yeah, I mean, right up until this hit, I was at True False Film Festival the weekend before that, you know, before we went into lockdown. The weekend before that, I was in Berlin. My travel schedule had been so crazy, and I think one of the things I've been reflecting on is just how much of our industry requires this, you know, in-person connection, or has until now. And it just, and I must admit that having the time to slow down personally, it's been, or let's just say I've been making use of it to, you know, just as Billy said, to take some time to think about things, you know, ideas and projects that maybe have been on the back burner that I've wanted to bring to the front burner for a while now, but have been difficult to do because I've just been running like a chicken with my head cut off. So yeah, it's been fine. I you know, I have family in Barbados. I'm from Barbados. So the other thing I've been mindful of is how this is affecting different places. You know, I wear two hats outside of my own personal practice as a filmmaker, one of them being heading up Third Horizon, you know, our Caribbean filmmaking collective. And so I've been taking stock of how this is affecting different islands. And they've each, you know, everywhere it's been really fascinating to see how each one is taking completely different response. So, you know, Barbados is on complete lockdown. You can only go to the supermarket on certain days. And so, yeah, I've just been kind of taking stock of how this is affecting all of these different filmmakers. And it's, you know, some communities are struggling more than others because of their immediate concerns. I feel grateful that I have the kind of, I guess, whatever counts as security these days allows me to research and write right now, because there are a lot of people who don't have that luxury. A lot of filmmakers who don't. And so, you know, trying to be mindful of them and see how I can be supportive of them in these times too, whether that's through one of my roles, whether at Third Horizon or Oolite, or just as, you know, a friend.
Yeah. I just wanted to say also that the live stream went down a minute ago, but I've put it back up in case anybody lost it there.
I have a question. We're getting questions on our page. Is your personal page open so anybody can click on it and watch it?
Should be. Yeah,
okay.
Should be. Sure. I'll make sure, but yeah, it should be. And you can share from my page. It should be the top live stream there. And Diliana, tell me, because you have your hands in a lot of different sort of organizations that are really all about community meetings and getting people together. Talk to me a little bit about how that's affected you and shifted your focus in the last month or so.
I don't know if I have a lot of hands in many different organizations, but definitely I have in FilmGate. So I'll focus on that if you don't mind. Yeah. So FilmGate, well, actually, and I'm sure Kareem is going to talk to the fact that we got the word that everything is closed in the middle of the Miami Film Festival. So my first thing is my heart goes out to especially the filmmakers like Kareem who were killing it on the international festival stage, and have an amazing documentary, and they have to reshift on how to present these films out in this new reality, for lack of a better word, right? But we as FilmGate, a lot of our members we're a member-based organization. A lot of our members were in the middle of productions. So we had to readjust on the fact that we provide production support to the productions. How do we we had to reassure them that we will provide production insurance and all the support that they expected whenever we go back to shooting. Same thing as what Jason said on a personal level. We had and also Billy said we've had some projects that were kind of brewing inside that we were behind because we had so many workshops and we engage our community on a daily basis. So by stopping all these events, we were able to refocus on maybe the more creative projects. Like Stiltsel VR. So we spent the last month and a half working really deep into the virtual reality project that we're creating, which is a game documentary hybrid on the 7 iconic houses in Stiltsville, and I'm really hoping that a hurricane is not going to head to them this year and they still survive. So on a personal level, the really small silver lining that none of us want to admit to is that we have now more time to focus on writing and creating. But it's really difficult to enjoy when we know that so many of our members and us, of course, are suffering financially, and we don't know a lot of them don't know where their food is going to come from, and are they lining up in food banks. So we're constantly communicating to our members to see where they're at, what do they need support with. And you're right, a lot of them have shifted to development and post-production, and they're writing scripts, and we're lucky as creators that we can be able to kind of focus on creativity as almost like therapy too, right? And when it comes to the events, we had to keep pushing, right? We have a monthly festival. In March was supposed to be Women Directors Month. It was sold out at the Silver Spot. We pushed it. We keep pushing it. We don't know when we can go back to theaters, right? And then when it comes to workshops, we have to figure out how many of them are going to go online, and is it really conducive to a good experience to go online. Certain skills like screenwriting are not that difficult to convey through an online workshop. Certain skills like touching film cameras, which is one of our workshops with Kodak, I don't think that can happen online. So at the moment, it's going to happen at the end of May. We are limiting it to 15 people. We're lucky to have a big enough space in downtown Miami to be able to socially distance if we have to. So if we're allowed to go back, we'll still have the workshop. If not, it gets pushed. Our interactive festival that was supposed to happen in May got pushed to August, and it's about to be pushed again to December. It's going to happen, but we're now exploring different technologies in order to make sure that we can do maybe an intimate festival of 250 people, let's say, or 50, and then the rest of it can happen online. So these are, it's as a tech geek, I am fascinated by the technologies that are being offered, but also they're not there yet, right? Like we experienced it this morning with Zoom, which I was telling you in the green room that I'm not a big fan. So I'm kind of hoping that I hate it, right? Yes, same. And so I'm hoping that new technologies are going to be developed that we can explore that can help us as creators and also as communicators.
Yeah. Just the live stream went down again. It's back up again. But I want to let everybody know also that that we're going to, this is all being recorded as well. I guess I should have said that up front, right? In the state of Florida, I think I have to. But this will be online as a full video as soon as this ends and I get the file or whatever. Kareem, I want to, you were like Diliana was saying, you were right in the midst of the heat with Mucho Amor, and you had a phenomenal premiere at Sundance this past year, and you were hot and heavy on the film festival. I know you also wear a second hat of being, at O Cinema and the exhibitor side of things. Let's start with your film side with Mucho Mucho More, and tell me kind of what effect it had on you and where you're headed with that, what the plan is.
Yeah, I do wear multiple hats, mostly because I need more than one to cover my bald spot. But it was a very weird time. We had our world premiere at Sundance, which was phenomenal, super exciting, wonderful, so well received, great press, all this stuff, and then we had a slew of invites. We got invited to every film festival we wanted to play at between Sundance and our summer release on Netflix. So that was terribly exciting. We made it to True False, which is a wonderful festival. We had a wonderful experience there. But we were supposed to play at South by Southwest, at Full Frame, at Hot Docs, at Seattle International, just Ambulante in Mexico, and a slew of other festivals, some of which didn't even get announced. And then, of course, just COVID started rearing its head rather quickly. The interesting thing is that being at True False, which is in Columbia, Missouri, you wouldn't kind of know that Corona was something like going on, because everybody was very like huggy, handshakes, very friendly. And the following week, we were set to be the closing night film of the It's a wonderful festival. We had a wonderful game at Hot Docs, at other festivals, some of which didn't head rather quickly. You wouldn't kind of canceled 2 days before our closing night. You wouldn't kind of like closing night and the Olympia. So that was heartbreaking. My co-director Christina was like in New York, set to get on a plane, and we had to tell her like take a plane back home to LA. And so we were heartbroken, because this is as much a Miami film as anything else, and not being able to show it at home was heartbreaking, devastating. But we're focusing on the positive aspects of it. Our Sundance premiere was so wonderful, more than any of us could have imagined, and that the film will premiere on Netflix July 8th. And it's going to go to 193 countries, and more people will see it that way than all of the festivals combined. So while we're honored and privileged and grateful that we did get invited to so many festivals, and we're totally bummed out that we couldn't go to them, we're at least still enthusiastic about the film's eventual release. But the festival experience is so unique and so important for filmmakers, not just to share their films with audiences, but as a way of career development. I mean, you meet so many people at festivals, you network. I mean, I think everybody here who's had that experience knows that it's kind of a very different than sitting in a meeting in LA or in New York or in Miami or anywhere for that. It's, you meet people on different terms, and it really can lead to wonderful things. So yeah, aside of the film release itself, it certainly has a career component that we didn't get to network with as many people. We didn't get to connect on different levels. But still, we made a movie. It's done. It's coming out in a few months. I'm excited about that. And that's what I'm choosing to focus on, the good part.
Congratulations on that too. Yeah.
Thank you.
So tell us about O Cinema on the other side as well. What are you guys? I saw that you have the live cinema going as well. How did you shift into that?
Relatively quickly. We were the first theater in Miami to close. We had a call on the 11th, including with the City of Miami Beach city manager and other folks, and we made the call to close the next day. So we closed on March the 12th. And it was a difficult decision, but I think it was the most responsible decision to make, and the right one for our community and our staff and our patrons. But it's a difficult decision because we're a nonprofit indie theater, right? Generated revenue, ticket sales, concession sales are a big chunk of our budget. We're not just grant and donation dependent. We're very earned revenue dependent. So it's just a heavy decision when you make something like that. Maybe we could have held out another week, but we didn't think that was the right thing to do. Almost immediately, the question was, how do we pivot to remain engaged with our audience, to continue to serve the community in a different way, which is ultimately what we do, and to keep entertaining, informative, engaging, impactful films coming to folks. So we started on Friday, the 13th, with a small, we call them small screen movie picks, and they're daily recommendations of films that you can see on, Netflix, Amazon, any kind of the most accessible streamers. And we've been doing that daily since that day, just pointing people towards something to see. And then very quickly, a conversation pivoted to, well, what happens to all these new films that we had been looking at, been planning to show, wanting to show. And so at the same time that we were having that conversation with some of our exhibition colleagues, some distributors were doing the same thing. So, which is, timing was perfect. Our good friends at Kino Lorber were releasing a film, Bakaru, Brazilian Western, and which is something that we were going to show. We wanted to show anyway. We were planning on dating it. And so that gave us the opportunity to kind of launch this virtual cinema initiative, which is being able to see films right from your home, on your devices, sometimes streaming them on your television. And so that's allowed us to continue bringing new films, the types of films that we would show at O Cinema's physical theater, to this virtual space, allowing us to, one, continue serving our audience in a larger way, and also, generating some modest revenue, which is so important right now. We've taken the same approach, curatorial approach. I mean, there's actually a lot of these films now coming onto the space. We're not showing all of them. We are treating it the same way that we would program our theater. So 1 to 2 new films will open on a Friday. They'll be available for a week. If the audience responds to them, we'll hold them on for another week. And if not, a new film will come online. We just thought it's important to kind of retain as much of the normalcy of what we do for our audience as we could. So that was one way of doing it. But it's, it's not without, it's not hyperbole to say that, this will have an enormous effect on the future of film exhibition, depending how long it lasts. I'm an eternal optimist, and I think that at some point we will return to some sense of normalcy, and people will start coming back to theaters, probably in significantly fewer numbers. And our daily MO is going to have to change. How we interact with customers, how we showcase films, capacities will have to change. But I'm hopeful that it'll come back, because I don't think that there's any other experience like seeing a film in a room full of strangers and friends in the dark, and that shared experience is very powerful. So I'm hopeful that will be returning sometime soon.
Yeah. So this live stream keeps going down. I think it's got some sort of like 5-minute more. It seems to go 5 minutes and then shut down. So instead of me going constantly live and live again, I think I'm just going to record this, if you guys don't mind, and then I'll post this afterwards. But I wanted to get over to Andrew, because I know it's good to see you, by the way, again, Andrew. I know that you also have, you've been working in Southeast Asia as well for a while, and you still have connections to productions that are going on over there. Talk to me about what your last 3 months has looked like. I know that you're also working with Jason on the Third Trinity as well. But talk to me about kind of where your productions are at and how this has affected you and what you're working on as well.
Sure. Well, so it's been a really startling time, I think, partly because, yes, the film that I made in Hong Kong a couple years ago was set to premiere during Basel, Hong Kong. So I think because of that, I started to feel the ripple effects of this maybe even earlier than most, because they canceled that in January. So we were talking about taking a trip to Hong Kong. We were supposed to go there. The whole coronavirus felt like a thing we needed to pay attention to. And then that not only has canceled the art fair, which shifted our entire plan. That was the end of a year-long festival release strategy to end at the art fair and then pivot into an art world sort of context. And then we've been offered screenings that have then been pulled in places like Singapore, which are also dealing with this. So on the front, my documentary work has suffered for that reason because we were in release. Then I did have a short film Jason and I produced together that was playing the Miami Film Festival, actually played its first screening and then didn't get to play its second because the festival shut down in the middle of the cycle. So, I mean, at one sense, that's like, to echo Kareem, sort of it's a hard loss to know that the release part is, the festival part specifically is being shut down. But I'm glad the movie's finished. It can either come back or find an audience another way. It's not paused in the middle of production, which I think is in some ways worse. And then on the same end, my day job is I work with a company called Fabula here in Los Angeles. I'm in the LA office. It's a Latin American company. And it's been really kind of amazing because as a company, we do a lot. We have sort of four corners of the business: production and production services are two of those. And those have been completely paused. And all the advertising work we do as a company is completely paused. The only area of the business that is on fire is development. And now it's a little bit like trying to drink from a fire hose. So, the days have gotten longer. Not having a commute, what actually means is now there's 2 more hours to do work. It's accelerated to a degree that is like I'm grateful to have it, but at the same time, it was really nice when my days ended, and they really don't right now.
Right. Yeah, I can imagine. That was, that was always one of the joys of living out in LA, right? Was the when you worked from home, it gave you an extra hour or so of work. Yeah. Right.
I have a question that actually has to do with like what Andrew just said, and it happened to us too, where we screened a short that we produced in-house for once, and it was the world premiere at the Miami Film Festival. And then we couldn't screen it a second time, and we've been discussing it with filmmakers. So maybe there's a lot of good brains on here that have a lot of experience. Do you think that it might be a good idea to kind of restart its cycle, its screening cycle in 2021? Is that a possibility, or like how would you handle it?
I mean, my personal feeling is that once the lights go back on, it's going to be incredibly crowded. This is true on the development end too. It's like once we can sell again, everyone is going to be selling, so it's going to be even more crowded. So the crop of festivals are going to have to deal with whatever new films are coming in also. So I don't know that we can just pretend like this pause didn't happen. And I feel like you can keep going, but it's going to be more crowded, so more competitive. Either festivals will honor the relationships and sort of screening commitments they made before, but I think there's a very good chance, even if you do go through, you just get buried. I think things like Amazon and their South by Southwest, short-term live streaming festival, those are interesting solutions to take advantage of now because the movie's still fresh.
Yeah. It's, and I think it's just too soon. That's the other thing. I mean, the reality is so many folks have just not figured out what they're going to do, whether that's festivals, distributors, or whatnot. I mean, everybody's kind of like drinking from the fire hose is a good example. Just that so much news is coming. The date of when things may resume to some sense of normalcy or quote unquote reopening feels like it keeps shifting. I mean, I was just on calls yesterday where folks were just saying, well, we're gonna, we're still slated to go to September, but then we had a call this morning and we're gonna move to December. Some folks, I think, some festivals, I think, took a more pragmatic view and just canceled their events instead of trying to postpone it, because that might have made the most sense. And it's hard to move the beast when it's so large, and it's hard to cancel a festival for that point. But yeah, I mean, come next year, there's going to be so much content. Festivals are content fighting for space, and possibly limited space because of limited resources. I mean, 2021 editions of some of these festivals may have to be shorter just as a cost-saving measure. Well, because of the kind of financial hit in 2020.
I think on the same point, they're not going to come back in the same way. Like, ask me right now if I want to go back to Sundance and sit in a room with 250 people and then spend, like, I always get sick at Sundance.
Yeah, I was going to say, we always get sick at Sundance already.
The Sundance flu is already a thing. Am I going to want to go back now to the same degree?
Yeah, I mean, again, I just had a conversation yesterday with somebody who had a festival, who programs a festival, runs about 2 weeks, and they're talking about what it looked like. They're like, well, we might just have to do a 3-week festival. In this case, they own their own venue. We have to make it 3 weeks and do multiple screenings at 25% capacity. So, I mean, who knows what it's going to look like. It's so up in the air. I mean, this will absolutely be, kind of one of those anomalies in the history of the industry, that 2020 will be that year where a lot of films got made and didn't get the kind of release that they were hoping or expecting. I think it's probably ambitious to think that they'll all come out in 2021. And we have to kind of look at the reality of the online world as a place where films could get shared and debuted and find audiences that way.
I don't know that I'm so sure that there's going to be this glut of content, at least any more so than there ordinarily is a glut of content. There's a lot of content out there because production is in that nether world at the moment, where studio space that had been booked for tent poles and major productions and even medium budgeted productions months and years in advance, there are major films that are shut down now that have to then pick up somehow where they left off in studio spaces, in rentals that are just kind of in this pause at the moment. And so other than projects in post-production, I don't know that there's suddenly going to be this major backup. I feel like exhibitors and studios, distributors and exhibitors are sort of treating this as like, okay, well, what was supposed to happen in 2020 is now going to just kind of happen in 2021. And I feel like the government needs to do that with everybody's rent and everybody's mortgage payments and everything. We need to sort of treat this as if this just never happened. We were all ordered on lockdown, and now we kind of have to reset, reboot the entire world. I feel terrible for filmmakers who had a sales strategy that involved world premiere film festivals followed by a festival tour to generate a market and interest. I mean, I'm sure Kareem will tell you that Sundance was indispensable in creating a market and a hype and excitement around his documentary. And he's fortunate enough to have a Netflix premiere this summer. But there are people who are really looking forward to, South by and Cannes and Berlin, and probably Toronto, which I'm sure is not going to happen the way they were hoping. And those filmmakers that content from 2020 is certainly, could create the glut we were talking about. But I think for the most part, there's this weird reset that's going to have to happen with people catching up on production.
To piggyback on that, it feels like too, the big question is how long does this last? Because the longer this lasts, the bigger the dearth, right? If we go back in July and suddenly things are picking up, what I've heard, Netflix is starting production in South Korea. So the hot spots, the areas that are calming down in terms of the coronavirus are going to be where the production moves. So even the projects that we are seeing are going to suddenly be K-pop dramas. Like those are going to be in vogue. So, hey, I got to watch a new thing. And that's what's going to pop on Netflix and HBO Max or whoever. But the longer this goes, the more unknowns I think there are.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things on the film festival world, because I work with a lot of directors at different film festivals. Right now, nobody knows what's going on. The mark just keeps moving further and further into the future. And it's one of those things of, well, do we just give up this year and plan for the same dates next year? Or do we push and try to, the problem is that the festival landscape is so well planned out. I mean, you have Toronto sits in the calendar year where it does because of Sundance and Tribeca and these other, there's no mistake to why they pick certain months. And so the overlap of film festivals is not something anybody wants to do. Nobody wants to, get into the weeks or months that a different festival is going after the same sponsors, the same filmmakers, things like that. And so there's really a lot of talk, especially in the Film Festival Alliance and the Arts House Convergence, about, trading filmmakers. It's almost like baseball cards on the inside too, when you see a lot of these directors at film festivals talking. They're like, okay, we'll take this film off your hands, but maybe give you the premiere of this one later on. There's a lot of talk about that between filmmakers and the directors. I know that a lot of the film festivals that land later in the year, like QS Film Festival, is still kind of trying to hold to those dates, but we don't know. And then the other question too is whether or not there's going to be a second wave to this, and whether or not, we might be doing this exact same thing come November, December.
Well, I think, it's really important that we get as comfortable as we can with uncertainty right now,
Well, we're independent filmmakers, so it's been hard.
Exactly. We're built for this. But yeah, that second wave is something that's been on my mind a lot, Quincy. All indications are that we will have one. Yeah,
it's hard to predict, right? But it's sorry, Billy. It's hard to predict, but I feel that for sure we have to be conscious about using technology and focusing on smaller groups, no matter what. Even when it comes to film production, smaller film productions. I think Spain is reopening at the moment their film productions, but they're limiting them to super indie, 10 people on set. So it's very it's very controlled. And I think that will be probably what's happening for a while.
Yeah.
But that's my,
I think that's an interesting question. What is production going to look like if and when it ramps up later this year? I know our entertainment attorney is already drawing up releases and liability waivers for crew members who are currently out in the field shooting COVID-related verite docs and news docs and things. So they're already dealing with this from an insurance perspective. What is insurance going to look like? Also, this is not really any industry or government or entities decision. This is all going to be individual decisions. There's going to be some crew members who need the work and need the money and who are willing to kind of take the risk and go out into the field or on set or in production again. But it's not going to be up to a government or a studio or a company that's going to make a decision for everybody. It's going to be up to in the case of documentarians, are people going to let us in their house or in their office to shoot a documentary? Are they going to come to a studio or a set to do an interview with us? This is going to, reopening and is up to every individual person and how they want to interact with the market again.
Yeah, Kara Lozano from the International Documentary Association published an article yesterday specifically about that, because the this is going to affect docs so differently, because in many cases there's this prolonged exposure. You're embedding yourselves with people over a period of time, will subjects want you to film them? How do you then, I've really been thinking a lot actually about archives and, documentaries that make use of archival footage, because I think now's a good time for that. Kind of pivoting here to what we can do. We all mentioned screenwriting, but I really love, I don't know if anybody saw the Mike Wallace Is Here documentary that came out last year. The director was given access to the CBS archives, and that relies entirely on archival footage. I mean, now mind you, getting access to archival footage is quite a challenge and very expensive. But I think I'm really excited to see what work does get made during this period, because we know how we are. We're not going to stop making. It's just going to look very different. And I think we'll see some creative things about that. Going back to the documentary stuff, there's a part of me that's itching to get out there, because I'm concerned about, abuses of power that are taking place in this climate. And so, I have a pretty full plate right now, but there's a part of me that wants to be out there, because what's happening, what's happening that we're not seeing because we're all locked up. But I know that there are others out there making that work, and I salute them, but I'm also, fearful for them. It's, so many conflicting emotions all at once.
Andrew, I know that you, with leaving leaving the bus through the window, that was a very sort of meditative, personal doc. Is there something itching in you also to kind of get out there and do something sort of one man band-ish like that again?
I mean, yes, absolutely. But I'd love to. And I personally feel like, and this is something else that Jason, Kareem, and I actually work on together, the Oolite filmmaker residency, which is a micro budget grant for local South Florida filmmakers. The idea, I'm a firm believer that kind of small scale film production is something that should always continue and can continue in this environment. And I think is a really positive direction for independent filmmakers to go. I think as long as you're not trying to make an expensive movie cheaply, and you're trying to make an interesting movie with little resources, I think you have something really great. And I don't think that gets, I don't think that's impacted. If anything, that could be increased by this strange moment we live in.
Yeah, it should be thriving. I mean, that ethos is something that we all need right now,
That's actually a really good segue, because I think we're hitting 10:45 here. So let's talk a little bit about that segue, kind of in the Oolite Filmmakers Residency, and then I want to talk about some of these other like grants and stuff that's available like right now and a little bit down the line for filmmakers. What is the kind of update on Oolite Filmmakers Residency? I haven't looked into that recently.
Well, currently we have one grant that's open, a call that's open for the block, which is a short documentary contest. We extended that deadline out to May 21st. And that's a documentary contest in which we ask people to give us their ideas for short documentaries about Miami-Dade neighborhoods. And those selected will have, an opportunity to pitch, their, 5 finalists will be selected to pitch their idea for a film. So that's open. We had Oolite Arts was running a more general relief fund for visual artists, which includes filmmakers. That's now closed, but we were really heartened by the response and the support we received and were able to in turn offer. So those are the 2 things on our end. We have online programming going on, of course.
Tell me, Diliana, I know that you also are close to
Sorry, that's my dog.
Finding funds for filmmakers throughout the year. I saw something regarding Arts Resilient as well. What is that? And are there any grants or things out there that you know of that can help filmmakers right now or coming up here in the future?
Yeah, there are a lot. I mean, I'm sure that the competition is also fierce, but there are so many grants and we keep getting them every day. So what we started doing is compiling a list of all of the grants that are going towards organizations, but especially towards independent artists. So if you go to our website, filmgate.miami, there's the first tile is COVID help, assistance in the time of COVID-19, and you can just see a list of grants and deadlines. Some of them are coming right now, and some of them are on rolling timelines. So yes, keep applying. I think the newest one that just came in this morning was Southern Documentary Fund, which is $5,000 towards documentarians. And it's, I believe they are giving it to 20 filmmakers. So I don't, it's a competitive grant, but 5,000 is a good development, a little bit of good development money at the beginning. If you are an organization that has received a grant from the National Endowment of the Arts or an artist, like that's the closest deadline right now is the NEA deadline. So if you have received an NEA grant in the last 4 years, make sure that you apply for the NEA support because it's also a very competitive one. It's going to be 1 out of 4 organizations that receives it. There are a few in South Florida that have received it, same with artists, but it is $50,000 for the next year and they'll come in July. So that's a nice chunk to develop. So go on our website and filmgate.miami and then we're gonna keep updating. So we're gonna just keep putting links. And then I know we are about to open, we only can accept 1 fellow a year. So we're about to open our fellowships to, and it's going to be a short film. So please apply. And if you are developing a film, it was surprising to see how many filmmakers continue to become members and ask for support throughout the last two months. We thought, there will be more concerned about kind of the basic needs in the hierarchy of Maslow: food, shelter, survival. But as we were talking about at the beginning, it's a good opportunity to be creative and to focus on development. So so if you are interested in developing a short film or a feature film, become a FilmGate member, and we'll be happy to support.
Yeah. I also wanted to mention two others. I talked with Michelle Satter over at Sundance the other day. I know that they're working with the Artist Relief. People can go to sundance.org. And also, I know filmmakers have access now to Sundance Collab, which was usually like, I can't remember what the price was on that, but all of their webinars are now free.
Yes.
So you can go on there, and there's all sorts of different programs that they're running and courses.
Yeah, I think they just released a branding one with Refinery 21, I believe. So and they pre-record them too.
Right.
Sorry to interrupt.
Unlike my horrible live Zoom session here,
No, you're recording.
I think this crisis has illuminated a lot of inequities and dysfunctions in our society and in our government. And since we're talking specifically about our industry, I'd say for me it really highlights the dysfunction in the film incentive world, especially in Florida, where of course for the moment there is none, but there's a lot of renewed interest year after year in the legislative session, and a renewed push for next year. In that Florida, because it's a tourism economy, has been so outside production centric. It's been a tourism driven incentive. We've seen it work better in other places where it's either functioned more as as cultivating small business and, most importantly, indigenous companies and businesses, or in the case of Georgia, where it's invented an industry in a matter of years, invented a multi-billion industry by creating nuances that necessitate studios and companies to build in Georgia and to create permanent offices and homes in Georgia so that they are employing people who live and work in the state on a full-time basis, rather than sort of blowing in and out of town and then getting film incentive applications that ask you how many hotel nights your production generated. Well, on our production, 0 hotel nights. We all live here. We all eat here. All of our money stays here, but yet Florida was so obsessed with $1 billion studios 3,000 miles away. So I think maybe we can have a real conversation now, which I was already starting to do with state legislators, about making it more focused on small businesses and startups and indigenous companies and people who live in the state and work in the state full time. And so maybe this is now a moment, as Rahm Emanuel would say, never let a good crisis go to waste. Maybe this is our chance to change the conversation about a lot of things, including film incentives in the state and how they might function better for really, the real filmmakers. When I say the real Florida filmmakers, and people who are local, we could find a way to generate full-time jobs and keep that money here.
Who are some of the people that are leading? Like, in case there are people that are listening to the Zoom meeting that want to get involved on sort of more of a state level and lobbying for those types of things, where would you send them?
Well, you just call your local lawmakers, your local state representatives and state senators, and because you're not going to really talk to people outside of your district per se, because they're not going to make time for you. They have enough of their own constituents. So you have to find your local reps and state senators, and if you're interested in shaping that conversation or nudging that along.
Kareem?
And I just add that, Billy's absolutely right. Thankfully, at the local level in Miami-Dade County, the Film and Entertainment Office, under the leadership of Sandy Leiterman, has created a Miami-Dade incentive program that it's now in its second or third year, and I think the first year was $100,000 on $1 million spend, but I think there's now a different amount of tax incentive on $500,000, and that has been successful, and it's growing. And I know that Sandy hopes to continue to grow it to kind of help funding projects at different level. And she and her office are a resource, because part of what they do is absolutely fight for the film industry in South Florida. But I think that, to underscore what Billy said, taking it from, kind of the holistic Florida first approach, I would say it's not just attracting folks to come and shoot here, but about creating more opportunities for the folks that are here. Because the Georgia and Louisiana, those are really good examples, and so much of our talent base had to leave Florida because there wasn't enough work here, and they're now living outside of Atlanta, or they're living somewhere in Louisiana, among some of the other states that have really developed this program. So, but I think at the local level, even, obviously you need your state reps, state senators locally, but even something like getting more involved with our film and entertainment office at the county, because those, it's really kind of, they have to hear it, the state has to hear it from every corner that they can, how important this is.
And I think if we're lobbying the local government, but also the local film office, from my experience, $500,000 is way too high of a number at this point. So we need to go down even more at 250,000, I think, is what usually the budgets that are happening at the moment locally. So I know that someone that's talking to a lot of filmmakers that are local, that's completely out of their budget, especially for first or second documentary film.
And I think that's why you have to go to the state level, because that's where the money is and the dedication of resources are. Unfortunately, I've not had the same positive experience with the Miami-Dade County Film Office or softcore porn producer Sandy Leiterman, as obviously Kareem has had. But I find that to be a fruitless waste of time. I think certainly the greater resources are at the state level, we've seen that through the years. We've seen them, like I said, send tens of millions of dollars out of state to major studios, and I think it's time that we create some permanent jobs for. I like the Florida First concept. I'm all about that alliteration. And Florida First that speaks to me, and it should speak to everybody.
Yeah. I also wanted to just say, because this was on my list just before we move on here, but there's a lot of great resources at documentary.org as well. I know that the IDA and Firelight Media and ITVS teamed up, and they also just had a great sort of Zoom meeting like we're doing the other day about resources that are available for documentary filmmakers specifically. Kareem, I also wanted to ask you, because there are a lot, the independent cinema world is critical, for filmmakers. What are some of the things that, people out there, that may not be filmmakers, but are just fans of cinema can help? How can we help O Cinema to get through this time as well? Like, what are some of the things that we can do to help our local cinemas?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. There's, 3 immediate things that you could do. One is, if you're not already, become a member of your local cinema. Most of us, whatever community you're at, most have memberships that start at like the $50 level. And why that's important is that those are sustaining dollars, and the larger you build a membership infrastructure that can help support the organization year round is hugely important. Aside from being a member, donate. Almost every indie theater, honestly, almost every nonprofit at this point is asking for help. We have not been pushing send us money, donate, because I know that folks are overwhelmed with a limited amount of resources. But if you have a couple of extra dollars, a lot of folks donating some extra dollars goes a very long way. And thirdly, and this is probably the one that's most mutually beneficial at this point, is see the films in the virtual cinema space. O Cinema is among one of many indie theaters around the country that are participating in virtual cinema. Go in and watch a movie. There's not stuff that you're going to be able to see right now on iTunes or Netflix or Amazon. These are brand new independent releases. And that is really critical for a couple of reasons. One is that in most of the cases, these are revenue shares. So half of the amount of the ticket comes back to the theater. But the other part of that is just as important, is that other half is going to these indie film distributors. And one of the things that we haven't talked about is, just the synergistic nature of this business. The major distributors, really kind of large distributors, are to a certain extent are fine holding their releases for quite some time, right? In fact, they have to, because they need kind of massive amounts of people to see it based on the budgets that go into making these films. So those films, as we're already seeing, are getting pushed either to later this year, or some are getting pulled without a release date because they want things to return as much sense to normalcy. Smaller indie distributors, however, are either having to put these, wanting to get films out because cash flow is such an important nature of what they do. They are small businesses, but they champion the most amount of films that are coming out at any given time. So the other reason that you should be watching these movies is that we need to keep these distributors going. We want to keep this the infrastructure of this industry at the independent level going. You can support both your local theater and these independent distributors who are championing these films at national and international levels by buying a ticket and seeing something. This week we have a dog and cat week, just because we figured like people needed some kind of fluffy entertainment to be drawn away from the bleach bottle. So that's one way of doing it, is just going and watching something through a cinema and becoming a member, becoming a supporter, and spreading the word. I mean, it's so basic, but it really is strong. Like encouraging other folks to do the same. And there's a lot of folks are doing, a lot of theaters. We're looking to do some more of these kind of virtual Q&As, so that there's still a sense of engagement with not just our audience, but with the filmmaking community. So get a couple of friends and watch a movie that's available on cinema, and then have a Zoom happy hour and talk about it.
Yeah. Andrew, did I see you wanted to jump in?
Yeah, it's not that I need to jump in. I need to jump off.
Okay.
But take care. Good seeing all of you.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us, Andrew. I appreciate it. I guess one of the final things that I wanted to get to here also was just kind of like what our perspective is on moving forward here, and any sort of hot takes on where we think this is going. Down here, I was telling offline to Diliana and Jason, we had sort of a big kerfuffle, I guess is the word, down here yesterday, because the county or the city opened up the beaches, and the media down here took that and ran with the title, Key West opens its beaches. Well, in less than 24 hours, we turned away 6,000 people at the roadblock at Key Largo, because it was just, people were gonna flood in. And finally, they changed the titles on their websites to reopens beaches to residents only. But they had forgotten to add that last part to the titles.
You guys are going to have to secede from the union again.
Yeah, we've already thought about it. We declared war again on COVID, and that didn't do anything. But it's whatever we can do down here to stay relevant. But I wanted to ask, what are your takes right now on? And I guess I'll start with you, Jason. Like, you said something really important earlier on about let's get used to being in this sort of ether world of not knowing what's coming next. But where do you see this heading in the next couple of months?
I have no idea. I have no idea. I mean, I'm really trying to get comfortable with that. We may have a resurgence in the fall. It may be worse than what we're seeing right now. I don't know. I mean, I think that first and foremost, we have to think about taking care of each other. And maybe the work can grow out of that. But it's, I hate to say that the work is secondary, but, I'm just trying to get comfortable with the uncertainty, because the thing is I don't think anybody knows you know, it's not to say that we can really, you know, I'm paying attention to what the World Health Organization is saying. I'm paying attention to what's happening in Sweden. I'm paying attention to what's happening in South Korea, in China, various states around the country. And there's a strange, well, for me at least, I can't say it's the same for everybody. There's a strange reassurance I have in the fact that nobody really knows, you know, and that we just have to be patient. It's not like there's, I don't know, we're being excluded from, you know, some key wisdom here. We're all figuring this out together as a species. I watched The Day the Earth Stood Still last night. I probably shouldn't be talking right now.
I think, you know, what Billy said too, in terms of any pandemic really always shows the fissures and the cracks in society. It always has, or any large scale event that affects lots of people. And I think it's a really interesting time for documentary filmmakers, because there is such a sort of focus now. There's not a lot of, you know, extracurricular things going on. And so there is a lot of focus on, you know, leadership right now. You know, this really shows, you know, I mean, we've seen this every single day on our television sets about how, you know, one day the leadership can seem great and then the next day it can just take a dive. And so I think it's a really interesting time for documentary filmmakers to focus on those types of topics as well.
So when did leadership seem great?
Well, you know,
I totally missed that.
Locally in the Florida Keys, we had quite a few eye-opening moments in the last couple of months here.
Something I want to mention before I forget, I should have mentioned it earlier. Field of Vision and Topic have a documentary freelancer relief fund. The first round has already closed, but it will be reopening on May 6th, which is next week, Wednesday, I believe. And it's only open for 3 days. Application open next Wednesday, May 6th, and close on Friday, May 8th. And that's for any freelancers who've been affected by COVID, which, you know, I'm sure we know a ton of them. Unrestricted grants of up to $2,000 to support personal financial needs during the COVID-19 pandemic to freelancers who've experienced hardship from loss of income or opportunity as a result of the pandemic. So just wanted to make sure I got that out there. It's one of these relief funds that I feel has kind of floated under the radar a bit, but yeah. It's certainly very helpful.
Yeah, thank you for that. Diliana?
Yes.
What's sort of your guys' plan at FilmGate kind of moving forward? I know you were talking kind of moving the goalposts back in certain events, but what are you guys doing sort of day in and day out right now, and where do you see this going?
Yeah, so my co-founder, Jose Jaco, shout out to him. I'm not alone in this, which has been great. But both of us, like Kareem, are eternal optimists, and I think that's a big base of how FilmGate was formed. So we believe, we talked a lot when we first knew that we had to reshift our strategy completely, and we have 3 full-time staff that we sent them home, so they're working from home, but very diligently, and kind of, as Billy was saying, like, we're working through a lot of our workshops that we recorded and we haven't really posted yet. So one of the things that we're going to do is post a lot of our post-workshops on our YouTube channel. We want our community to keep talking to us and let us know what they need at the moment and what they need in the long term. That's why we exist. That's a big part of our mission. We are focusing on our 2 creative projects, which is a feature film. We were writing a script at the moment, and then the virtual reality project. So if anybody is a coder, a 3D developer, an animator in 3D, we are building a team because we're also being approached by members who are developing virtual reality projects. I think we didn't really touch on this, but the expectation is that if we end up being at home for another 3 years, which I think there's talk about that. It's not just 3 months. It's not just July. It's very possible that we'll have to be socially distanced until our vaccine is developed, which I think the shortest vaccine ever developed has been in 3 years. So maybe it'll be shorter, maybe it'll be 3 years. VR is going to play, augmented reality and VR are going to play a big role. So we encourage all of our community to start focusing on these projects as well. And for example, on a personal level, I've been hanging out in VR raves on the weekends. And it's been really fun to be in this kind of environment because you create these like fantastical avatars and you're in this amazing, and it's like some of them actually being hosted from Miami developers. I think one of them is, her name is.
That's the most on-brand thing in this panel discussion so far. Diliana
VR raves.
VR rave. No, you going to VR raves. Yeah.
No, but it's you know, and this is, I think these are the silver linings that you want to explore, right? But it's a local girl. Her name is Virgo. She's hosting them. I think her studio is based out of downtown Miami. I highly encourage you, if you have an Oculus set, to go hang out there. But point is, I think that technology is going to be more and more important. So I would suggest to explore it, right? And then when it comes to FilmGate, we are, and we talked about it at the beginning, we are exploring different ways of presenting a workshop. A lot of our focus is on workshops and skill development in our community. So we are exploring ways to create workshops that are interactive, that are helpful, that are engaging, so it's not just a pre-recorded video. So we prefer to take some time off to focus on that as opposed to immediately go online and start selling. And that was, we wanted to give our community a bit of a break too. So yes, some of the goals were shifted. I think smaller, more intimate workshops. We have a youth camp in the summer. It's our second year, where in 2 weeks you learn how to make a short film. And it's amazing to work with teams if they're focused, because they can create a short film that's quite good in 2 weeks. But it's very possible that we'll have to put it completely online, work with our tech sponsors or tech partners to maybe lend us some cameras to send to the kids, or do some kind of a combination and a hybrid. So these are things that we're exploring. And I think by the end of May, we'll know where we stand a little bit, but as Jason said, like it's very, very nebulous. So it's constantly being nimble and reshifting when it comes to being a FilmGate and as an organization and responding to the needs of our community. And at the moment, the needs are very much, where do we eat? Like it's, where do we get money to make our next project? How do we survive? And I think we're all waiting for small business checks to come in, and they haven't, or whatever incentive, nothing has come in yet. So we have to survive.
You bring up a really great topic too, which I think on the tech side of filmmaking, and we didn't really talk about this. I'm going to try to do another one of these Zoom talks in a couple of weeks. And I know I talked with you, Diliana, about this. But I was possibly with an animator who, and animators right now are like right at home, no pun intended, but right at home with this whole thing, because they're used to working on these sort of like, these remote-based projects. And I think you're going to see tech-wise a lot more emphasis on like remote working, capabilities of shifting, large amounts of data and projects, back and forth to each other. I know, Billy, you guys are kind of already doing that, right, with Netflix? I mean, in terms of working with because your editor is out of state, is that right?
We have 4 projects in post at the moment. We were lucky enough to have 4 projects in the can with very minimal production to complete necessary. And that's the thing with the global pandemic, of course, comes this health crisis. It also yields economic devastation, a market correction, which I think creates an opportunity for innovation. And independent filmmakers who, our mantra is limitations breed creativity, are uniquely situated, I think, to contribute to that innovation, whether it's in technology, whether it's in methodology, protocols. Like I said already, the entertainment attorneys are working on the insurance end of it and the liability end of it in order to ramp production back up at some point in the near future. And I think that's what we're dealing with now. I've got a project that we had planned to do reenactments for that might wind up being creative animations instead, because you require actors and and shooting on location for reenactments, whereas the animations are obviously an at-home, an animator sitting at home with servers and computers, for example. I think that's going to happen to exhibitors as well. I think cult and community exhibitors like O Cinema. I know our friend Naib at Night Owl is planning on doing a drive-in now to kind of adapt to the current situation. But organizations like O Cinema that have a following and have a relationship with their audience, I think are going to survive. What relationship do you have with Regal or AMC, or meaning like you don't? And I don't know when I'm going to go to a movie theater like that again. I just don't need to. I've been going a lot less in my advanced age anyway, whereas as a kid I went every weekend. But now, like, I don't really see the need or the risk to ever really do that again. Go to some auditorium with 400, 500 people to watch some tentpole movie that I'm just as comfortable and is just as convenient to watch at home. So I'm trying to come up with there's like individual interviews I need to finish some of these docs, like literally one interview. So I'm trying to work with my DP to create a semi DIY doc kit that helps me match the look of the interviews, so I have consistency with the style of the doc that I'm working on, but maybe with one local hire that literally sets the equipment up on someone's front porch, right, or in their hallway, and then kind of, lies low. We give them a lighting diagram. The interview subject and or their spouse or whoever that they're at home with can help them kind of set it up, and we can kind of minimize or eliminate crew and local hires. Like, we're just trying to come up with kind of creative solutions to how we can finish some of this stuff and make it work with a comfort level and I think that's going to be the one to try to keep it glass half full here. I think the opportunity for innovation is exciting. And I think Jason's right. None of us know what the hell is going to happen or how all this is going to shake out. But I think we could all start to get creative about the opportunities here for everyone.
I think in this time, focus pullers are going to get really good at that 6-foot focus pull also. Kareem, I'll let you kind of take us out here too. Where do you see kind of things going, on all the hats that you wear too? And what are your hopes here in the next couple months?
I also don't have a crystal ball. I have no idea what's going to happen. I like I said, I believe that at some point there's going to be a return to some, right. If I had one, I made a movie about a guy with crystal ball.
That's right. You made a movie.
Yeah. He didn't tell me anything about this before he left. So, no, listen, the reality is, no one knows. No one knows what's going to come of this situation. I am optimistic that there will be some return to normalcy at some point. I think that, mission-driven, community-based organizations like O Cinema that are not about profit at the end of the day, but are about serving a community will survive through the support of the community and because I believe in what we do. And I believe that people do want to return to some sense of normalcy. And there's a lot of people who are not going to want to step into a movie theater. I totally get that. And there's, I think, at some point, a lot of people who are going to want to do that and be able to come together, whether it's in any kind of communal setting. That's going to change. What that looks like is going to change, but I don't think that the desire is going to completely go away. What I'm somebody who's been working primarily from home for a very long time now. So my day-to-day doesn't look terribly different. But I went into the film industry because it was inside of me. It's something I had to do. And my filmmaking practice comes from, a desire to tell stories and to get this out. It is a creative outlet for me. Like I think it is for all of us, right? Otherwise, I probably would have better luck, trying to go for like regional manager at Target or bad boy number 7 at Sedanos. Certainly more stability. Certainly more stability. But the reason I don't, the same reason I think all of us are is because we're storytellers and we want to discover stories, tell our own stories, and share. And if anything, in this kind of great uncertainty that we're all in, I think a creative outlet has been a saving grace. You know, I'm working with Dennis Scholl on a new documentary about Bunny Yeager quite actively, and have a couple of projects that are in development. Some a little quicker than others, but and of course finding new ways to kind of serve our audiences of cinema. That kind of creativity, I think, is feeding my soul, keeping me going. I think it's the same for a lot of folks. So I would really just encourage people: don't put your pressure on yourselves to be productive, but certainly put a pressure on yourself to find something that's nurturing for you, and it's channeling maybe some of that anxiety and energy. And I think for me, few things do that better than creating. So maybe this is kind of just this great reset button that got hit. So I think for me, fewer than creating reset button that got hit. We want to share outwards because we will get through this. Whether it takes 6 months or 6 years, whatever it is, we will get through this. We've been through worse. And in the meantime, we kind of need to feed our souls. And I think film does that in a way unlike anything else that I know.
And Kareem, when does Mucho Mucho Amor premiere on Netflix?
See, this is where we're friends. Mucho Mucho Amor premieres July 8th on Netflix. So you have a whole weekend where you have to do nothing. It's a great opportunity to dress up in every ridiculous outfit you know at home and watch Walter Mercado. So July 8th.
Do you have your capes with you?
No, I will tell you, here's one of the saddest parts of this all is that as we were going into Sundance and we were very ambitious about this festival tour we took, I spent way too much money on sequence outfits that I will, just because, there's 5'10" and 270 pounds of me. This is a big billboard to advertise the movie for free when I'm wearing ridiculous outfits. So now they're all just hanging up on in the closet in the room that I'm in, and on our next Zoom call, I will be wearing them.
Exactly. Why didn't you wear it on this one?
I was gonna say, give us a Liberace style television special, man. Come on.
Jason and Diliana saw what those things kind of look like in person, so it just helps me. Ridiculous.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining me here today. I think it's really been productive. I hope you guys stay safe and good luck on all your projects right now. And I'm sure we'll be talking very soon as well.
Thank you for organizing it.
All right. Thanks, Quincy.
All right, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.